The next thing she knew, she was exactly the same height she had been in the morning, except for one peculiar thing. There was a cat sitting on the bough of a sycamore a few yards away. A peculiar cat. A Cheshire cat, in fact, which was nothing at all like Dinah. The Cheshire cat was grinning curiously.
Oh, Cheshire Puss, would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?
That depends a good deal on where you want to go.
Oh, I don't really much care where.
Then it doesn't matter which way you go.
But I want to go somewhere.
Oh, you're sure to do that, if you walk long enough.
But aren't there any people who live around here?
In that direction, there's a hatter. And in that direction, there's a March hare. Visit either you like. They're both mad.
But I don't want to visit mad people.
Oh, you can't help that. We're all mad here. I'm mad. You're mad.
What a dreadful thing to say. How do you know I'm mad?
You must be. Or you wouldn't have come here, would you?
All the while the Cheshire cat was talking, part of him was disappearing and reappearing. First his head, then his tail, then everything but his smile.
And it's very difficult to keep talking to you when part of you is missing the whole time. You know, I've seen cats without smiles before, but I've never seen a smile without a cat.
That's hardly surprising.
The Cheshire cat disappeared altogether. And Alice had no choice but to keep right on walking until she came to the house of the March hare. She thought it must be right, because the chimneys were shaped like ears, and the roof was thatched with fur. It was so large a house that she didn't go nearer until she'd carefully nibbled some of the left-hand bit of mushroom and grown about 2 more feet. There was a table set out under a tree in front of the house, and the March hare and the hatter were having tea at it.
Have another cup, Hatter.
Thank you.
A dormouse, which is really a sort of squirrel, was sitting between them, and the other two were resting elbows on its head, talking around its nose.
Thank you, yes, or thank you, no.
Whichever you like.
Very uncomfortable for the poor dormouse. Only since it's asleep, perhaps it doesn't mind. Hello? May I join you?
No room, no room.
Why, there's plenty of room. Just because all 3 of you are crowded down at one end of this big table.
Your hair is too long.
Have some wine, then.
I'm too little to drink wine. And besides, I don't see any.
There isn't any.
Then it wasn't very polite of you to offer it or to make personal remarks.
It wasn't very polite of you to come without being invited.
I didn't know it was your table. It's laid out for more than 3.
As long as you're here, why is a raven like a writing desk?
Oh, good. Riddles. I'm good at guessing answers.
You mean you think you can find out the answer to it?
I think so.
Then you should say what you mean.
I do. At least I mean what I say. It's the same thing.
Not the same thing a bit. You might as well say, I like what I get is the same thing as I get what I like.
You might just as well say, all mice are creatures is the same thing as all creatures are mice.
Through all of this conversation, the dormouse seemed to be asleep. But it spoke just the same.
You might just as well say that I breathe when I sleep is the same thing as I sleep when I breathe.
It is the same with you. Anyway, have you guessed the riddle yet?
No, you have me all confused. I give up. What's the answer?
I haven't got the slightest idea.
Neither do I.
I think you two could do something better with the time than waste it asking riddles with no answers.
If you knew time as well as I do, you wouldn't talk about wasting it. He's a very fine gentleman and should be referred to as him. You've probably never even spoken to time.
Well, perhaps not, but I keep time with my foot when I play the piano.
Ha! That explains it. He won't stand for being kept under someone's foot. How would you like it?
That's the trouble here. It was just last March, before the hair went mad, that I was singing my favorite song at a concert given by the Queen of Hearts. Twinkle, twinkle, little bat, how I wonder what you're at. Up above the world you fly, like a tea tray in the sky.
He'd hardly finished the last verse when the Queen jumped up and said, "He's murdering the time! Off with his head!"
Ever since that, time won't do a thing I ask him. It's always 6 o'clock now.
Is that why it's always tea time here?
Yes. And we've no time to wash dishes between whiles. All we can do is wake up the dormouse and have him tell us a story.
Wake up the dormouse. Tell us a story.
Once upon a time, there were 3 sisters, and they lived at the bottom of a well.
What did they live on? You see, I'm always interested in questions of eating and drinking.
They lived on molasses.
Oh, they couldn't have done that, you know. They'd have been ill.
So they were very ill.
But why did they live at the bottom of the well?
Have some more tea.
I've had nothing at all yet, so I can't have more.
You mean you can't have less? It's very easy to take more than nothing.
No one asked your opinion.
Ah? Who's making personal remarks now?
Dear. And I still don't know what they were doing at the bottom of the well.
Learning to draw.
Draw what?
Things beginning with an M, such as mousetraps and the moon.
But why beginning with an M?
Why not?
Well, really, now that you ask?
Then you shouldn't talk.
Well!
The party was becoming so impolite that Alice just got up in a great huff and walked off. The Dormouse fell asleep again instantly, and neither the March Hare nor the Mad Hatter took any notice of her going,
Have another cup, Hatter.
even though she looked back once or twice,
Thank you.
hoping
Yes,
they would
but
call
thank
after
you,
her.
no.
The last time she saw them, they were trying to put the Dormouse into the teapot.
You'll never catch me going there again. It's the silliest party I was ever at in all my life.
Just as she said this, she noticed that one of the trees had a door leading right into it. And having no place more interesting to go, she opened it and went in. Strangely enough, there was a croquet ground on the other side, in a beautiful garden among bright flower beds and sprinkling fountains. A large rose tree stood near the entrance of the garden, and there were 3 playing cards, with heads and arms and legs, painting the white roses red.
Things just keep on getting curiouser. Why, one of them is the 4 of clubs, and the other is the 5 of hearts, and the third is the 6 of spades. Pardon me, why are you painting those roses?
Well, the fact is, miss, this here ought to have been a red rose tree, and we planted a white one by mistake. And if the Queen found out about it, she'd have all our heads cut off. So you see, we're doing our best.
8, 5, 6. It's the Queen. It's the Queen.
The Queen! The Queen!
The 3 gardeners threw themselves flat up on the ground, spilling their red paint all over the grass. And Alice turned around quickly to see the coming parade. They were all playing cards, exactly like the gardeners, with their hands and feet at the corners. There were 10 soldiers, all clubs, and 10 courtiers, all diamonds, walking 2 by 2. After that came the 10 royal children, all hearts, and the spades, strolling casually, carrying musical instruments. Next came the guests, most of them kings and queens. And among them, Alice recognized the White Rabbit. It was talking in a hurried, nervous way, smiling at everything that was said, and went by without even noticing her. Then followed the Jack of Hearts, carrying the king's crown on a crimson velvet cushion. And last of all came the King and Queen of Hearts.
But they're only just a pack of cards. I wonder why people are afraid of them. Oh, dear. The Queen is coming in my direction.
And who are you, child?
My name is Alice, Your Majesty.
And who are these 3 creatures lying down? And what have they been doing to that rose tree?
Please, Your Majesty, we were only...
I see perfectly well what you are trying to do. Off with their heads.
The procession moved on over the croquet ground as 3 of the soldiers came back to cut off the gardeners' heads. But Alice had stacked them neatly, one on top of the other, and sat down on them. as if she were on a picnic blanket. The soldiers looked round for a minute or two, then gave up and went back to where the game was beginning. After a moment, Alice followed them.
Are their heads gone?
Yes, Your Majesty.
Good. And can you play croquet?
I think so.
You'd better, if you want to keep your head. Let's begin, then.
At the Queen's command, people began running around in all directions, tumbling over one another. When they got settled down, the game began, and Alice had never seen anything quite so extraordinary. The balls were live hedgehogs, the mallets were live flamingos, and the soldiers had to double themselves up and stand up on their hands and feet to make the arches. Alice absolutely could not manage her flamingo, because whenever she had its long neck straightened out and was going to use its head to tap the hedgehog, it would twist itself around, look at her face, and kiss her on the nose. Just then she noticed a peculiar appearance in the air, which turned out to be a grin, and she realized it was the Cheshire Cat again.
How do you like the Queen?
Not at all. She's really...
Who are you talking to?
It's a friend of mine, Your Majesty, a Cheshire Cat. Perhaps you and the King would like to be introduced.
I don't like the looks of it at all. However, it may kiss my hand if it likes.
I'd rather not, thanks.
Don't be impertinent and stop smiling at me like that.
The King said to stop smiling. Well, off with his head.
Yes, off with his head. Executioner, do your work.
Begging your Majesty's pardon, you can't cut off a head unless there's a body to cut it off from.
Nonsense. Anything with a head can be beheaded.
And if something isn't done soon, I'll have everybody's head off.
Oh, dear.
But while the executioner sharpened up his huge axe, the Cheshire Cat just smiled and disappeared entirely.
Where's it gone?
Gone.
Come back and have your head cut off.
Cut off.
That's an order.
Order. Well, seeing that cat's gone
And you, Miss Alice, caused all this trouble.
and ruined our day,
We'll just have to have your head cut off.
Why, what an awful thing to say.
and that white rabbit.
Yes, since he started the whole thing. Oh, dear. Oh, dear.
At this, all the cards changed to normal size and spun around in the sky. Alice and the rabbit ran for their lives, never looking behind them. They ran over the croquet garden, through the door in the tree, past the Mad Hatter's tea party, where the dormouse was climbing wet out of the teapot. Past the caterpillar smoking his pipe on the mushroom, past the mouse swimming in Alice's tears, past the glass table with the little golden key on it, down the corridor with candles and chandeliers, and straight up the well, where they were carried along by a warm wind from underneath. While running, the rabbit had taken out its watch again.
I'm late. Oh, dear, I'm late again.
And Alice had once more tried to catch it to ask the meaning of everything that had happened. By the time she was out of the rabbit hole and under the tree where she first had seen the strange creature, she was so tired from running that she could only lie down to catch her breath. She fell asleep nearly at once. And when she awoke, the sun was still shining, and her history book was in her hands. She rubbed her eyes and stretched her arms and yawned.
Well, perhaps tomorrow I'll read my history. Although I still don't know the use of a book without pictures.
And she skipped along home, where by now her lunch was probably ready. And if anyone asked her a riddle, they would surely know the answer first.